2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting superhero month episode on Inside Movies Galore. We are about to go on another physical journey discussion into some shadowy realms.
Shadow.
Well, not exactly that movie. I guess I'll go ahead and say it. We're going to be going on about the 1990 film Darkman. And I'm just going to go ahead with the IMDb.
Sam Raimi film. Very important distinction.
Yes. In fact, Sam Raimi, he couldn't get the rights for The Shadow, in fact. So he ended up getting the rights to do a Hollywood superhero film of his own. So I'm just going to, before Dustin gets back, I'm just going to do a small, let's see, bio here. So a brilliant scientist left for dead returns to exact revenge on the people who burned him alive.
Oh.
Bum, bum, bum.
Oh. Dustin, are you here yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Coming out from the shadows is Darkman's apprentice.
Actually, I think it was like Mo that
jumped out.
suggested this one, wasn't it?
I believe it was.
All right. Good choice.
Oh, shit. No.
We're already demonetized.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about this film, Mo, then?
Well, as you already said, Sam Raimi's movie that he did when he couldn't get the rights to The Shadow and Batman, so he just kind of took elements of them and little seasoning of like Universal Monsters era stuff and threw it together and did his own thing. You could be forgiven for just thinking of it as kind of, remixed The Shadow, because that is in a sense what he did, It was directed by Sam Raimi. It's produced by Rob Tappert. It's got a screenplay by Sam Raimi and all sorts of dudes with uncredited help from the Coen brothers.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was like 12 versions of the script to this bitch, and you can tell at different points. It obviously stars Liam Neeson, Frances McDormand, and Larry Drake. It's got music by Danny Elfman. It was released on August 24th, 1990. I selected this because I just used to rent the shit out of it as a kid. I think that, this and Batman and The Shadow are probably my favorite superhero films. They definitely still be on a short list of my favorites to this day. So I guess what was your guys' first impression of this? Was it your first time watching it? Did you enjoy it? I guess we'll start with you, Dustin.
Well, I first saw this movie, so slight confession, I didn't have time to watch it today, but I saw this movie 4 times in a row, like 3 months ago. So we're going off our memory. We're going off our memory. It was watching all the commentaries on the Shut Factory Blu-ray. And so at first, I knew about Darkman, but I didn't really know what to expect. And I found this to be a pretty good movie, so I really enjoyed it. You can see the beginnings of the techniques Raimi would use in Spider-Man. And so it just felt like it felt like a prototype. That's kind of my overall impression of it. It felt like a prototype. It's like, okay, the story is cool. It's there. And we're going to see this blown up into something else with a different character. Which Raimi's Spider-Man does remind me a lot of Darkman. And I wonder if he got to do Spider-Man because of Darkman.
I feel like it
and-
had to have had something to do with it down the
Well, that
line,
and
you know.
also Evil Dead, and because I mean, it shouldn't be discounted that this film, yeah, I think it did lay the groundwork for much of what would appear in Spider-Man, but also we wouldn't have this without all the pioneering work he'd already done with Evil Dead 1 and
Oh,
2, and that he would later on do with Army of Darkness and
Some pretty
all
good
that
Evil
stuff.
Dead-esque effects when his hands
Now,
melt in that one part.
In all
And
honesty,
Oh,
in
yeah.
all honesty, though, it was probably also his doing more studio-friendly with big star fare like The Gift and For Love of the Game that probably helped the studios go, yeah, we can let this guy do it. Yeah.
Well, my take on this is I actually owned these on VHS at one point in time. I had evidently gotten them as hand-me-downs from a friend of mine at the time, and I absolutely enjoyed the series of films at the time. I thought that Durant was an interesting character. And I know him from another film called Dr. Giggle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Called what?
So
Dr.
Dr.
Giggles.
Yeah, he was in Dark
Nice.
Knight of the Scarecrow too.
so he is definitely an interesting character, but rest in peace. He did pass away a few years ago. So, I relatively enjoyed him as a villain. I mean, he's the only one that I remember actually cringing at the fact that he had this fucking cigar cutter and he had this collection of fingers from all his victims that he had. It was like, who can I add to my next, thing? So, but I definitely would not have gone with returning to Durant right offhand if I were a director, though. I would have saved him for like the third film. But other than that, I enjoyed the series, and this particular film was actually relatively darker than the other two. So in comparison, and this predated the Shadow from 1994 with Alec Baldwin. So I think that this laid the groundwork for what Alec Baldwin could do in that film as well. So
yeah, like he either couldn't get the rights, I'm sure, because they were starting to build that project, or this led to it happening because they were
he
like,
was
well,
actually
shit, he denied him, and he did a successful movie with a Shadow-esque character. So
he was actually supposedly working on a script that included Doc Savage and one other character. I was reading up on it a little bit.
that's interesting.
And let's see, I think Doc Savage and one other, but I can't think of it right offhand. But it got grounded because he couldn't get the rights for it. He actually had like several scripts already for the Shadow. It was just denied to him. So, but in any case, anyone else want to add their thoughts?
So my first impression with this, actually, I got my first impression of this not long after it came out. Though I didn't see it. I didn't see it until I was able to get it more on home video watching. Like literally home video. I think I rented this at not Blockbuster, whatever the rental style was of where I was at the time. And I really liked it as a superhero movie. It kind of had it reminded me, and it still does, of a combination of some of the old serials, like the old Shadow, like some of these, combined with Tim Burton's Batman. And I was just eating it up. I kind of love that vibes. It kind of takes the old kind of gritty noir-esque superheroes of those times and brings them into the present with kind of a more of a modern reboot. So modern being a relative term. So to me, it was just really fun to revisit this again. When I got it in the collection, I had to get like the trilogy, and rewatch the whole trilogy because it just it was just exciting. So I had to just get back there and just watch all of them. Even though you didn't have Liam Neeson for the other two movies, it was still fun.
Yeah, they're
And I-
decent.
It's
And I
a
think
fun
this is the
ride.
only. I think that this is the only superhero film that I can think of where a man has actually, besides Deadpool, who has been seriously burned beyond belief. And I think Deadpool was burned. The thing is, wasn't it
Well, his
like
was cancer.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. With him,
Cancer and a
it
healing
was-
factor out of control.
Yes. And if you're talking about characters or main characters, because
Well,
definitely Dark Knight featured a character.
main
burned
character?
dramatically.
Main character.
Yeah. Okay. But
Because I know that
Anyway.
there have been several characters in comic book history that have been burned beyond belief.
right.
But
Well, and I think
So-
it's a good example of something that was an original property too, that kind of was a
Yeah.
minor sensation in its own way. I mean, Darkman spawned action figures, comic books, pretty goddamn
Oh,
great
yeah.
NES game. I mean,
Right.
2 direct sequels. It's
So-
I think. Go ahead, bud. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to cut into your. I was just going to continue with the first impressions, I guess, if they're.
No, yeah. Have at
Okay.
it,
Keep
bud.
going, man.
I have kind of an odd one with this one. First of all, as I mentioned in the Shazam discussion, this was another property that did not catch my interest prior to its release. Part of that is this came out the same year, within a matter of months, of Dick Tracy, which was another comic book flavored movie. And that one really was more my speed at the time. I was a huge Dick Tracy fan. And I saw that movie in theaters. It was probably the first live action movie I saw in theaters. And this one just kind of fell by the wayside. I knew of it, but I just wasn't interested. And over the years, I kind of vacillated between being curious and not curious. And I don't really know why I never got more curious about it. It kind of just was there. I knew of it. And then when it was just brought up for this discussion, all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, I never saw this movie. And I really liked the edition. Shout has a pretty badass special edition. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to get the movie and I'm going to, and I really, really wanted to take some time and really enjoy this movie. But unfortunately, life got in the way. I barely got through a few of the special features. I did watch a couple. And the movie itself, I put on last night after our discussion, and we ran so late. I fell asleep for part of it. So there's probably 20 minutes I didn't see. But what I saw, I really enjoyed. I need to watch it when I'm fully awake. And I wanted to watch the commentary, and there was no time for it. But from what I've seen, it's a very interesting movie, very original. I do agree with Brandon's concept that it has flavors of Tim Burton Batman. As I said before, it does have a little bit of a Dick Tracy flavor to it too. And I can definitely see Sam Raimi has certain eccentricities as a director that are usually toned down, but they really got to run rampant in the Evil Dead movies, and they got a little bit of a play in Spider-Man 2 and a little bit in The Gift. And this movie, I think, shows those tendencies, the weird camera angles and all that kind of stuff. And
Especially in
knowing that,
those flashback scenes that you
Yes.
have.
and knowing that
Oh, yeah.
the Coens were involved a little bit. I wish I'd known they were actually in the film. They actually have a cameo, and I didn't catch it when that happened. But
That was when you were asleep.
it might have been. But I kind of recognize Sam's brother Ted plays one of the characters, and I kind of recognized him.
And what's
He's
interesting
pretty distinct. He's kind of everywhere.
is
Yeah.
what's interesting is at around this point,
Mhm.
the Hercules and Xena series were going on. So you get
Yeah.
different characters from the Hercules series and the Xena series. That was specifically the Xena series, I think. Where they show up in the Darkman films. You've got one of the villains characters. He gets puppeteered around in a sewer. I think that's Ted Raimi.
No, Ted Raimi plays the really skinny, scrawny, curly-haired guy that works with Durant. He's
correct.
Yeah.
But later on, Darkman actually goes after the people who basically destroyed his life.
Right.
And he basically brings Ted Raimi's character up from the sewer, and his head is above the ground, and he's screaming his head off as the traffic goes, and then he gets smacked and splattered.
Yeah, that was a rough way to go.
Yeah.
But you could definitely see that. It was almost like there was a dummy there being like paraded around.
Well, two great TV connections here. Neil McDonough is currently my favorite character to show up on any season of Arrow. Damien Dark was such a great character. Neil McDonough has a very, very small role in this. And of course, Raimi frequent collaborator Bruce Campbell. Apparently, Raimi fought for him for the movie, and the studio wouldn't go for it. So he ended up having that one brief cameo at the end. And of course, Campbell was in one of the greatest TV shows of all time, The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. So a couple good TV connections there. But this was one of Raimi. We'll get into some of that later. But Raimi has had a long history of fighting with studios, and unfortunately hasn't always gone well. But but anyway, who still needs to do their?
I believe Bane.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw this film back in college for the first time. I think I saw it on VHS. I rented it from the Media Resource Center. And I was one of the few people that actually rented VHS tapes there because I actually had a VCR there as well as a DVD and Blu-ray player. But saw it, and I think that it definitely has its appeal. At the time I remembered thinking that I was like, well, were these people like the best casting choices for these roles? But I can see why it has a cult appeal, and I appreciate that it's an original premise with a neat device to it, as far as like the time limit for when the artificial skin will eventually disintegrate.
Right.
And that's a great ticking clock. It's a unique idea. Kind of reminds me a little bit of some versions of Clayface a little bit. I think that the fact that it does make him lose his grip on reality, and also it does allow him to like disguise himself. I mean, he has a pretty unique set of powers, I think, and certain unique abilities, but also, I think that you definitely do get that kind of tragic monster aspect of the character as well, and certainly was a good basis on which to carry a character. I just sort of wish that he had gotten a little bit more than perhaps a cult following, because I do think that has a good basis on which to build more things, and they did have the two sequels, the two direct video sequels or whatever, but like out of all the movies, like this actually could be due for a remake, and something that could kind of take the basic concept and expand upon it, and make it really stylish, and I could see it, and I could see it kind of going all the way with certain aspects of the original, or especially these days where we're thinking about our bodies far more than we ever were in the past, for obvious reasons, and thinking about especially these days where we're able to 3D print all kinds of inanimate objects, and you know that the next frontier of that's going to be 3D printing organic tissue. It's like, well,
Right.
you know,
Right.
there's
They already
your
gotta do it, yeah.
yeah, well, there's
Yeah,
your
the
modern
science is
angle
real.
right there. Yeah.
Well, and also, this is interesting. One of the interesting things about watching this was seeing Liam Neeson when he was so young.
Yeah.
But like now, he's like the action star. So it would
Which-
be really, really cool to see him revisit the role. I haven't
Yes.
seen the sequel, so I don't know how that plays out. But I would love to see him revisit the role as an older
Yeah,
take
which-
on the character.
that still to me never made a lot of sense as far as like Liam Neeson action star, and obviously Taken really did kind of
Right.
kick off his career in a different direction, because like when I was growing up, he was Qui-Gon Jinn, and you know, he was the wise mentor figure. You know, there was Aslan in Chronicles of Narnia and stuff, so that was his, you know, role. And
Ra's
obviously,
al Ghul.
What would be
well, and
interesting?
it wasn't just that, because like for example, he did an amazing job in one of my favorite, very underrated dramas called Kinsey, where he played Alfred Kinsey,
Yes.
and he did an amazing job in
And
that.
he also played the voice. He also played the voice of the monster in the somewhat anthology on Monster Calls as well.
And that was
So
a good one too.
that was an interesting.
Very good.
Yeah,
I
so
think-
I always found that odd that he then became like this action star, and it's like, for whatever reason, like that doesn't compute in my brain, and I think that was part of what the
You must have seen Run All Night.
I haven't seen that yet, but
I
that
haven't
did
seen that one yet.
well, it did was it. No, I hadn't seen Taken. I still haven't, but like when I saw it, that was still kind of incongruous in my head, and like it's just kind of weird that so many younger people will know him as an action star, and I'm like, well, that's not who I know. But you know, so like when I was watching, I was like, well, this is from, you know, much long before Taken. But
Right.
you know, the in a way, I was like, well, was he and was Frances McDormand, were they the ideal choices for these roles? Because I was kind of basing it off of their other work, but at the same time, it's like, you know, maybe one shouldn't, you know, pigeonhole people, and because I don't like it when people do that.
I think that Liam Neeson was right for the role at the time. He had the voice for it. And right at that moment in time, he was a pivotal actor on the acting scene. I mean, I'd seen him a little bit younger in High Spirits in 1986, and
good movie.
he played a ghost in a recurring murder role. And so to me, I've seen him play different roles, and I thought this was a very different role for him, especially underneath all that makeup and all that jazz, having to deal with looking like Two-Face, you know.
Plus,
So-
he looks sad.
Yeah,
You know, he looks sad. Like I don't know if there's another actor. There's maybe a couple, but there's so few actors who are so good at portraying that sense of like immense sadness, and I think that's perfect for this role. You know,
Yeah,
he looked
he was-
at everything taken.
as far as Frances McDermott, I'm not sure that she was entirely right for the role, because at the time when I saw this, I actually thought that she was actually relatively pretty. But now seeing her in the role as an adult, I actually see some of her age. So maybe she may not have been entirely right for the role, but she got the
and
emotions down.
She's a big wrench in the gears of it, though, for sure. Like, she
Yeah.
wasn't
Apparently
very good.
Apparently, she and Sam Raimi did not see eye to eye on the character.
Yeah.
And that kind of shows a little bit. She's
Yeah,
kind of aloof
And
in
her
the
and
movie.
Liam Neeson rewrote a lot of their shit together, I guess, and that shows too, because that is the huge like chink in the armor of Darkman, is just the chemistry between them is
not
non-fucking
there.
existent.
Kind of
I know.
stiff, to put it politely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that really held back my ability to like fully love the movie, is that I did not necessarily feel like the roles were as cast as well as they could have been. The chemistry wasn't there. There was some tonal
Well, yeah,
strangeness.
what-
And the weird, the
when you
weird part
ask-
of it.
when you ask for someone to marry you, you don't expect them to say, "Well, I gotta think about it."
Well, that kind
You
of
know?
went with the idea of her being kind of aloof. But I do think there were a couple of weird. One, she is a brilliant actress. I give her that. I think she's excellent in most films.
Oh
But
yeah,
the other thing is though the weird part of it is she is and has been for decades now married to Joel Cohen. She and the Coens and Sam Raimi and Ted Raimi and they're all buds. They're like really close.
yeah.
So you would kind of think they could work really well together on a movie, but apparently not.
Dude, I think this was a case of her using that relationship to flex on poor Sam a little bit, because he looks back at it like it was a bit difficult, and she's still proud of it. I guess all those fucking rewrites they did. It's
You know,
the
that's
point too, with the
isn't
lack
that
of
what
like
happens?
chemistry. Go ahead.
Isn't that what happens when you work with people who are basically like family to you, that like you can be
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
too close to the situation?
Right.
As long, I guess, if she's proud of it though, that's
Like,
cool.
I wish
The lack of chemistry though is to the point in the movie where Julie's really not needed. Like the most enjoyment she brings me in the film is just hearing him yell Julie. I just think that's funny.
Actually, though, I
Yeah.
think that the way they set this up with the character, I really liked how they did it, because they set this up for the perfect continuation. You can continue this character with as many different actors and romantic possibilities as possible, because he's a master of disguise. He's lost his identity. So when it's one of the few times that I could safely say, when I went from this to the sequels, that I wasn't having like a jerkish, like traumatic reaction of, oh, this is a new character, I have to adjust.
Right.
It's not, because this guy has no identity. That's the problem. He's lost almost all of it.
And it does set up almost a perfect FU to the studio, because they told him, you can't have Bruce Campbell. He's not right for the role. You can't have him. So what they do, the last shot, he's Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, that's great. They could have did the James Bond thing and just kept making these all the way till now. We could be sitting on like the 20th Darkman movie if they had taken off in a way.
Well,
Exactly.
and Sam Raimi and Rob Tappert, one of the other producers on the Darkman film. Both of them actually did produce behind the following two films as well. I noticed that they pretty much endorsed the two films. So I do like the fact that that it seems like the sequels were welcome.
Right.
So,
all right. But yeah, one thing that is interesting, you were talking about the acting and whatever. There are different levels of acting in the film, like the opening sequence where you see this guy who's like an established crime boss, and he's ready to defend his turf at all costs. And Durant and his boys roll up in there and do their thing, and it's really overacted. Except the guy playing Durant does a great job. He really does.
Excellent.
He did a great job, but it really is kind of over the top. But Larry Drake is the guy who plays Durant. But it was very, very, very well done, because it kind of sets that tone of, this is a comic book movie. This is a we're going to have some serious high, what do I want to say? Like some over the top characters here, but they're not all like, I did watch the feature where Drake talked about his approach to Durant, and he said that he intentionally played him as not so much. He's like, I don't like the twirling mustache; it bores me. But he's like, I play him basically as this is the most efficient approach, and I like the idea of villainy through efficiency, if you will. It's like it's really good for that character. But
Yeah,
there's a great moment where you're introduced to the finger cutting. And that's the part where the mob boss is like, he makes all these points, like point 1, point 2, whatever. And then Durant has annihilated his men. And he's like, now let's consider my points one by one. 1, I try not to let my anger get the better of me. Cuts off the finger. 2, I don't always succeed. Cuts off another one. 3, I've got 7 more points.
I'd have probably wrote it as 8, just as a little.
He was literally the sadist in this film. I mean, he literally pulled it off to a T, and he was going overboard, and I loved it. I mean, it was just if you wanted to go up against a villain, you didn't want to face this guy.
Right. No, Overboard was his.
He was a nasty villain, yeah.
Overboard were his henchman who was hopping around because his fake leg was a gun, and 2, the one who's maniacally laughing as he's mowing everyone down with the leg.
It's great. Like you said, it sets the tone perfect, and then it also shows like the campiness of the comic book vibe, but then it is pretty sinister at the same time.
The other thing that I noticed about Darkman himself is, did you notice that every time he got angry, is when he went into that super strength mode and that adrenaline kicked in?
Oh yeah,
that reminds me of the Hulk.
Well, you didn't like him when he's angry.
Basically, unlimited adrenaline rush.
The doctor explains it in a nice little exposition scene, where the doctor talks about how she basically severed the pain receptors, so he feels no pain, but the side effect is that he's more emotional. The anger,
it goes into all the other stuff, and his adrenaline isn't like limited,
Well, and also it reminds me of the villain in The World's Not Enough, where he had like that, whatever that was, that bullet wound in his brain or whatever that cut off his, which. I mean, the thing is, like, they acted like that was some kind of superpower, except that in real life, that would be horrible because, you could be bleeding profusely and you wouldn't know it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, pain is there for a reason. Yeah. It's to let your body know it's to let you know whatever you're doing, stop it.
There is one other character that I remember that had a similarity. I don't know if anyone of you knows the television show Haven. That was Haven, which was based on was a Stephen King thing that was on Sci-Fi Channel for a while. Well, the police, the main detective guy, he got an ability to not feel pain at all.
The other one that I was going to talk about was a TV series. Has anyone here seen Alphas?
No, I know of it though.
No.
Alphas was a good show. Unfortunately, it ended at season 2, and they ended on a major cliffhanger. And it's like, God damn it! Why didn't they do one more season? But one of the main characters in that one, his superpower basically is he has serious anger management issues. And the more angry he gets, the more his adrenaline pumps, and he gets super strong. And I really wonder if maybe the makers of that show were familiar with Darkman, because that's kind of it is very similar. But that show was interesting in that every character had a power that in some way was offset by a psychological default, if you will, like the character who could literally pull anything out of the ether because he could see internet waves was heavily autistic and very, like high functioning autistic, but was, so a lot of these characters, they had actual like psychological or physiological issues tied to their superpowers, which I thought was a really fun twist for the show.
It is.
like
And actually, Roger Corman's Fantastic Four actually makes that explicit as far as intertwining their powers with their personalities, which was that was always kind of implicit in the comics. They made it a little bit more explicit, but still, that's very much I think that's a more common trope in comics than I think you might think it is. Although then again, a lot of the times a character's personality will begin to change around their powers manifesting. But yeah, it's what you're talking about is more that the powers manifest as a result of their personality or their psychological makeup or whatever, which that's definitely an interesting idea. And
yeah, it's rad.
I think that it's and it's something that for sure I think you see that, especially with newer characters. I think you see the different unintended consequences of these powers that they have, whether it's on their bodies or on their emotional states or whatever, because with Superman, for example, there are different versions or different iterations of other characters around him where they're like, well, we need to be careful of his mental health and his figure out which side he's on, because if he were to go nuts or succumb to like the anti-life equation or something like that, then he could be a real danger. And that's on an extreme level, or even something very small where a character who's got fragile emotions, who's also really powerful, they can be a danger to themselves and others. And so you definitely see that here. And actually, to thematically tie it together, I think I mentioned Punch Drunk Love in the Superman episode, which that film and Superman the movie, in a way, both are about these people, one Kryptonian, one human, who are learning to deal with these very the fragility of their hearts, which are very human in their functioning, in their ability to feel and relate to people. And it's all about them kind of trying to navigate a world that they don't necessarily relate to fully, and sometimes they can be overcome by those strong emotions. And it's all about learning to integrate them into their lives. And even with someone like Barry Egan, who doesn't have any powers, he does exhibit some notable strength that he doesn't exhibit in other parts of the film. And so that's an interesting parallel there. And then that's on a small level versus Superman, which is a large level, and this is somewhere in between.
Yeah, they do a good job of showcasing how it like drives them crazy and stuff too. And I don't know, I thought the in concept the character is pretty well thought out.
I think you could easily take this same concept and you could it's not even so much technology, because the way that the character's written, like they weren't really, it's not like Spider-Man where it took them until the age of CGI to do him right in live action. And that was what a big limitation was for so long. Here, the way that the character is written, they obviously could film everything that they needed to film with him. They didn't have to compromise anything. But I do think that if you were to remake this with perhaps a more consistent tone, a little bit more stylish in its look, a little bit more cohesive, then I think you would have something that could really use the concept to its fullest potential.
Oh, for sure.
I just look back at these films with a little nostalgia because the first film, retrospectively, it was a darker tone, especially with Sam Raimi behind it. And the thing is, as the character developed, it developed its own cognitive sense of humor. I mean, especially in the two films afterwards. But that humor wasn't necessarily established in this first film, and you get the tragedy of him losing his ability to be human, you know. And so when Durant takes and destroys his life by taking his work and all that jazz, it is in a sense a revenge film, you know, a revenge action film. So I guess I have a little bit more stronger viewpoints on this film because I related to it at the time.
Oh, I love it, dude. I mean, it's classic in my mind. I guess it's probably a good time to just bang down the very simple plot and then go scene for scene and talk about how you guys felt about that shit. Basically, general story is, you know, there's this guy, Trask, who's like this corrupt developer, and he's working with, you know, Larry Drake's character. And basically, you know, this scientist, Liam Neeson's character, Peyton Westlake, is dating this girl who's like a lawyer, played by Frances McDormand. She has some document that ties Trask to paying off, you know, the, what was it, building commission or something, standard wise guys type stuff. And he obviously doesn't want this getting out. So she stashes it in Liam Neeson's shit. That's the one part of Darkman I've never really understood. I mean, she basically gets him screwed over.
Yeah. And I'm not sure whether the relationship with the developer started before or after.
I don't know. It gets gross pretty quick. So
yeah. So that really isn't established. So I guess
you can tell he was after her before. But...
Yeah, he wanted a piece from the get-go, but she just kind of went with it, I guess, after all was said and done. Because he made it look at first like friggin' Durant was like strong-arming him too. So he was like a competitor. That's what he told her at first. So she didn't believe that he had anything to do with it. Still don't understand why she stashed it in Peyton's stuff. How friggin' Durant even knew to come to the lab to look for it. Did she tell them? How the hell that? It's a bit of a plot hole. But they basically show up at his lab. They kill his poor Asian assistant. The guy seemed really cool, and like he probably had some good kung fu moves, but he didn't get to really use them. And you know, they boil his face. There's some sweet Evil Dead effects when his hands melt after he grabs like the contact things for the electricity, I guess. And you know, they blow him up with one of those little sippy birds, a lighter, and some type of flammable gas. What do you guys think of that whole scene?
That was an excellent little flourish to the kind of campiness of a good comic book movie. It's actually something I kind of miss from a lot of the current comic book movies, is almost that campy, almost serial nature of the comic book genre, to where it takes itself seriously, but not 100%. It's just like Tim Burton's Batman. Tim Burton's Batman took itself seriously, but not 100%.
Right.
There was always that slight camp there. And I don't know, it's just such a charm to it. I love this movie because of the charm. And just seeing the little bird thing go bending over and then like activating the lighter, I don't know. That's great.
Oh, I love it. I have Sippy Birds. It's 100%.
For some reason, his blow up scene kind of reminds me of the beginning of Deadpool 2. Just for some reason, where Deadpool is kind of going through that whole blow up scene of his own, you know, except he's holding on to a Wolverine statue that I don't think Darkman would hold on to very lightly.
Well, he's in more pieces than Darkman was when he was blown out of the building.
Yeah, it's amazing he went through that roof and out into the water like completely intact.
And the power that Darkman has that isn't gone over as much in the first film is he does have heightened regeneration abilities.
Oh, well, there you go.
Because of that that nerve being snapped. It's the adrenaline rush that's rushing through his body that strengthens him more. So it's almost like whatever they did in the hospital, it's like they made him stronger. you know.
Well,
But
that wouldn't be Regeneration. Am I correct? Because I haven't seen the sequels, but I'm guessing that all that stuff with them pushing him into the vat and everything was supposed to kind of alter him slightly.
that's true.
They don't really go, like you said, I didn't see that huge amount of it in the first film, but
Well,
it would make sense.
And to me, a lot of films back in the 90s often did a lot of things that stem back to, okay, it happened because of toxic waste.
That's why
Everything
Toxic
happens
Avenger was
because-
such a fun one, because it kind of made fun of that concept.
Right.
It all comes back to sludge.
Hey, I actually have a movie
Like
called
a Joker origin.
Yeah, a
This is
little
where
bit.
we learn that friggin' Durant collects the fingers too. It's not just like some type of
Right.
intimidation tactic, because he's like,
Oh,
get the Asian's fingers as they're leaving.
Oh,
Right.
he's an awesome character. He's a better villain than the main villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that guy's skill was just walking around on beams, I guess.
Though
The
it'll
next-
be awesome to talk about that when we get to it.
Oh, geez, yeah, that rivet gun. The next
Oh, yeah.
scene that we're treated to is that awesome fade to the funeral, which I just love that
Mhm.
transition for some reason. And then we see that he's in this burn unit, and this lady's like taking the kids through, showing them the kids, they're adults,
The kids.
just taking the
It's
kids on a
not
field trip to the
children.
local burn unit. No, she's taking the medical students through, and she's showing them Peyton there and his thing that spins for some reason. I don't know the medical benefit to that, but I love how she sticks him with the pin to make a point. That's kind of fucked up.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then
Well,
he,
just-
escapes from there and heads
Well,
back.
that's kind of a common comic booky trope too, of like the doctors that are not. They're more
Experimenting.
interested. Yeah, they're more interested in the research side of things than the actual healing side of things.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's pretty cold. I guess
Yeah.
Kathy Bates was originally
Experiment
supposed to do
gone
that.
wrong.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen Kathy Bates in that role, but whatever. Yeah, it would have been great.
But that's about it for that.
Actually,
He busted out of
Wasn't
there,
this
and
the same? Wasn't this the same year that Misery came out? I think it
Sure.
was.
It's 1990, so
Yeah.
that's damn
Hold
close.
on, I'll go grab my copy to check.
Yep. Same year.
Yep.
That would have been appropriate.
Cameo. I don't know. Then after that, that's when he goes out and scares friggin' Julie, looking like a homeless mutant, and
Right.
he decides to go back to his lab after spending a really painful-looking night in a soggy box that's pretty quickly blown away, and then he's just
Mhm.
soaked. We get to see some good action of, apparently, they're always being trench coats and trash cans. I've noticed that in a lot of movies. Like, just
Yeah.
pulling a trench coat out of a trash can. Who's throwing these away? I don't know.
It's the trench coat.
I mean, really.
And as iconic as it is, we don't get to see where he gets his hat. I don't think he's just wearing it when he's pushing all that gear back to his new lab after he
Right.
goes to the old one, and it's basically trashed. And
Yeah.
this is probably, I think, where the movie
they
really
said.
kicks off. Go
I
ahead.
feel like Liam Neeson said in the interview I watched that they almost literally went dumpster diving, not like in a real dumpster, but
Mhm.
like just old costumes no one was using anymore.
Oh, nice.
It's kind of, but yeah, you're
Trench
right.
coat
It is kind of
Probably
an
appeared in some
iconic
movies.
look.
Then,
Huh?
So that trench coat probably appeared in a couple, like a movie or something. Then
Could
That'd
be,
interesting
yeah.
to find out the history of. But I don't know. What do you guys think of his little lab that he sets up there in that whole
Well, it's an
montage?
abandoned building that he goes to.
Makeshift lab is cool.
I
He
think
did
it's
a remarkable job for assembling that out of scratch, basically. He did
Yeah.
a remarkable job.
It's impressive. It's definitely their nod to like Frankenstein and stuff too. That whole
Right.
scene.
a
I guess
little
there's
bit.
some visual cues in there that are supposed to be direct references, but I wasn't paying attention this time on that level to have noticed anything like that. It just generally gave me Frankenstein vibes. So mission
Well,
accomplished.
He gave me Frankenstein vibes with a little bit of Hulk and a little bit of the Mummy with his raps.
Yeah.
So to
Right.
me, that is the quintessential. I just love his whole get up. You know, it's something different, and I think it stands out in the superhero community. So,
Yeah, and I mean, he throws on the hat and the coat. He's got the shadow vibes going a little bit. There's just something awesome about someone running in like a trench coat. That's cool, especially on rooftops, you know. So basically, you know, in this scene, he's trying to crack this 99-minute limit on the skin.
Yeah.
They figured out before he got all fucked up that darkness is pretty much the reason why it can go beyond that. But you know, in light, it melts after that time limit, and he's not successful at breaking it, you know, but he still makes up a little kit to go out there, and I think he goes and sees Julie before he really starts killing the dudes, doesn't he?
yeah. In fact, he's only made the 99-minute thing, which is why it carries over into the second film with that. So to me, I think it works well for the film as it stands. That he's only able to wear certain faces a certain amount of time. You know.
Yeah, it's cool. Like Dane said, it's a good ticking time bomb sort of device there, where it's like you gotta beat that clock.
Yeah, well, honestly, the superhero, as cool as a superhero's powers might be or his look, what's even more important is the limitations or the obstacles, whether that's great villains or powers that have a double-edged sword attached to them, or, you know, powers that are really more like debilitations or whatever. And I think that's always the sign of a great hero, when their limitations are very, you know, interesting. And sorry to have to do this to everybody. I'm really, really tired. I've got an early work-related phone call tomorrow, and I barely slept at all last night. I don't really have a lot more to add, so I'm gonna say goodnight to people. I'm Dane Kyle, aka Dane Dameron on YouTube. I'm on Indie Horror Film Creative, where I do a show called Blu-ray Views, and I do unboxings and some reviews and things, trying to get my filmmaking going again. It's rather hard during a pandemic, but yeah, I don't really have much to add, so that's why I'm having to duck out early. But good seeing everybody, and have a good night.
Yeah, have a good night, bud.
Hey, man.
All right. Well, actually, in the last discussion we just did on Shazam, that was a good example of a limitation. Like, Shazam, he's magic. He can do anything he wants. But he's really a kid. So that's a big limitation there. Like, emotionally, mentally, there's a limitation. So, yeah, it is interesting to see, like, even when a character who theoretically is all powerful has that little.
Yeah, it's neat. It adds for some cool stuff in the movie. They kind of shoot it right in the foot, though, with the fact that later we're shown that he's got masks to spare. I mean, he could just be carrying one in a briefcase, throw it on in a restroom, and like swap it out. You know,
right.
But anyways,
when he first starts using the masks, masks, whatever you want to call them, it's very creative. I like the way that one dude. I can't remember what he reminded me. He reminded me so much of. I can't place it now, but that one dude, the way he just plays him. Like, without even the guy not even knowing it. He's asleep the whole time. But that was just a great little...
Oh, yeah, that was awesome. That whole scheme there, too, was just great. Like, framing him up. But that scene where he goes and sees her at the graveyard and then they have lunch or whatever is pretty fucking terrible. That's where you're really slammed with the, damn, these guys have no chemistry at all. And this something happened to this. Like, the whole tone of it feels different. And then we get another dose of it later with when they go to the fair. But I think it goes without saying that this part of the movie probably sticks out to anyone that watches it, and not for good reasons.
Yeah.
And I think after that's when, he starts going on his revenge spree there. The first dude he just kind of gets by chance.
Rampage.
He's spying on Julie like a badass vent creature. I love that part. And he sees Ted Raimi's character there, and he takes him out, and he does the little sewer interrogation on him, which is awesome. And I'm pretty sure there's more effects to it that we didn't get to see because the studio got nervous, I guess, when they saw some of the more over stuff that they wanted to do. So it'd be cool to see a full cut of this one.
I think the description was Raimi said something like some of the wilder stuff we wanted to do. The studio,
right.
Yeah.
I guess there's also a deleted scene where the guy with the prosthetic leg gets killed with the prosthetic leg by Darkman, and they had to delete that as well.
Really?
Yeah, wow. That would have been cool because I didn't even notice it, but apparently he's the only one of Durant's crew that actually survives the movie. He didn't, but we just don't see his death, And then this is where he's like, hell yeah, I'm going to start staking these guys out and getting pictures of them and making masks, and he kills the bald guy indirectly. Go ahead.
Which is amazing because in the second film, he's got all these Druids that have apparently been loyal to him all these years. So you almost wonder where the hell they all come from.
Are you talking about Durant?
Yeah, Durant. Yeah. Supposedly all of his guys were killed here. Where the hell did he get the men?
Oh, well, I mean,
they were all on vacation. This was his temporary crew.
Well, as far as we know, the film takes place over the course of, I think it's 23 days or whatever. No, it's got to be longer than that, because that's how long it takes him to make his mask, his face, initially. Which then is also kind of a bit of a plot hole, because if it takes that long to make it, how was he just cranking out those other ones? But anyways, he disguises himself as the bald dude, goes and inherits a couple of shipments of cash over the course of that whole sequence. And so we don't really get to see the benefits of that either. I would imagine he's going to upgrade the lab or something with that later. But basically he does all this after breaking into the dude's hotel room or whatever and chloroforming him, and then making it look like he's going to take a trip with Ted Raimi's character, who he'd already killed and they're looking for. So Durant and them come there, and we get the whole have a nice flight scene where they chuck his ass out the window after they see the plane tickets.
Right.
I don't know how they did that. It just was kind of cool, that manipulation of it all. Manipulating Durant and his just manipulating him in general.
Well, it does a lot too to not make him seem like just straight up murderous. I mean, because even though we didn't see the end results, Ted Raimi's death is pretty hardcore, and him doing it a little more finesse on the second kill, if you will, kind of made it seem like he wasn't all gone. He was actually still a pretty smart dude. Because that's a pretty ingenious scheme to think up there.
What are your thoughts, Dustin?
On the different skills?
Yeah.
It had good variety. I was sort of hoping hearing the play-by-play would jog my memory a little bit more than than it is.
Mm-hmm.
So
fair enough. I mean, after this, I think the only real kill sequence we get outside of Durant himself is where they come to his warehouse.
I remember the thing with Durant. I think that was probably my favorite scene, when he somehow tricks the helicopter into flying into that wall, and then the wreckage is just 1,000% on fire. Yet Durant somehow survives that for the next movie. I think they played a little too fast and loose with that.
For sure.
Well, the way they play that out...
Actually, I think I just burned myself out on the Shazam episode.
The way they play that out is apparently he's in a coma.
Sure. Giant fireball equals coma. That's cool.
Yeah, I know. That was that. How did he survive that? That was just
right?
careening headlong into a bridge with a helicopter. It just
Yeah,
I love the scene with the helicopter. The action in this film is really well
Pretty
done.
good.
I always
it's
thought it was
top-notch.
well handled. And two scenes in particular, the helicopter scene and the scene at the end with the final villain fight. It was, I thought, I don't know what it was, just seeing him like shooting that rivet gun, and the villain, I gotta give him this. Of course, he comes across just basically as, your typical 2D scummy capitalist asshole. Which seems to be prevalent as a villain in most films of the time. But he was intelligent enough to say, I've got to fight this guy who's stronger than me, but I'm going to make sure that I fight him on my ground with his history and just architecture and building, that he was able to say, yeah, I can keep my footing here. I've been doing this stuff for years. But you haven't done this stuff for years. You're a scientist. I got you where I want you, and that's just excellent there. I mean,
Oh, it's fantastic. The whole backstory
riveting his
of
hand to the wall, all that
that's
stuff. Oh,
amazing.
Mhm.
And just that whole backstory. I mean, the dude is super two-dimensional until you find out that, like, oh shit, this guy's dad used to make him go up there with the Indians. He says to work on the high steel as like a little kid. So you get this sense of like he had a pretty terrible life, and that's probably why he's such a scumbag. So
Well,
they
at
could have
least one
fleshed it
reason.
out a little bit more, but we get a little inkling of that. There's like a cool backstory there. It doesn't really matter because he dies. Well, maybe he comes back too. If Durant could survive that, I'm sure he's in a comic book somewhere or something.
Right.
He just took a rather large bump to the head when he fell off of the building and landed face first, and
Right.
it put him into a coma, as you would, if you're falling.
Yes,
He's
and
lucky.
you would.
I've forgotten the high steel days of his youth,
But
you know,
bounce back from anything.
Well, he does seem pretty hard-headed.
and we arrive there pretty quickly after the bald dude scene, because after that Julie blows the whole thing, and so does friggin' Trask. Like, he's like, oh, it appears she's found our scheme because I left the fucking document just laying on the desk when I was talking to her. But that's how they find out that he's alive, basically.
I do like how she just like is getting like edging out of the room, and he says, well, I'm not going to kill you. She's like, well, if you're not going to kill me,
I've got
And I've got some other things
I'm
to
gonna,
do.
yeah, I'm gonna go. I got
That's great. So after that, basically, because she spilled the beans to him before learning this, that, friggin' Peyton's alive, yada, yada. And she can't see him anymore. And he's like, oh, girl, we done got dirty with it pretty much already. So, and right after that, they tail her back to his warehouse lair. And we get the cool scene where he's like running around while they're launching grenades at his ass and shit. And he's jumping all over the place. And there's explosions. And then he lures the dudes into his lair and like swaps masks on him. I love that part where he's got the mask on the dude to look like him. Or I forget how exactly that sequence goes. There's like a mask over on the guy's face, and he sets it up so the other dude shoots him, and then pulls off the mask, and he's like, "Oh no, it was my friend."
Well,
and
you forget that there's some foreplay a little bit there where he's like kind of like he shows up and he's got the mask of the one dude, and he's like. How about you? How about a nightmare?
Yeah, it's great, dude. And the whole part where he's like running from that first guy, and he's lured him deeper in there, and he's all hiding in the shadows and shit. And that guy's like, "Where are you?" or whatever, and he just whispers, "Close." Like that's such a good bone chilling touch. And then he comes at him down from the ceiling, puts the masks on him. He has the other guy shoot him, and then he shows up with that guy's face, which is just a great scene. I don't know why I like that, where he's like smiling all maniacally at the dude while wearing his face. And that fella, he pretty much, kicks the shit out of him and sets it up so that he dies the same way that they tried to kill him, with the sippy bird and the flammable gas, the lighter, the whole nine yards. But with a twist, he does the holographic projection of it, so the dude makes it over there and thinks he's going to save himself, but then obviously, it's not the real one. And the shit goes up in flames as he is hanging from a friggin' helicopter, and that is one of the craziest sequences in the entire movie. It's got some humor in there, and pretty sure they nearly killed that fella that they were dangling from the helicopter.
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts on that whole sequence there?
Well, that
That was my favorite.
that whole sequence was pretty fun because they pretty much drag him across like the entire city, and there's a police helicopter that follows in pursuit, and they're like, "What the hell is that?" Well, we're just gonna follow it anyways, and you don't really get to see what happens in that foreplay, but he gets like swung into a building, and he's like, "Oh, sorry."
Yeah, that's great. They're dipping him down on the highway, and he has to see. Okay, here's a thing too. Maybe other people don't think about, but he shows some super speed in this sequence too, when he's running all fast across the top of that truck. So I think the adrenaline doesn't just work when he's angry; it also maybe works when he's scared, and it's pretty humorous too.
We forget about the moment when he's sitting down in front of Hung Fat, and he's trying to tell him to give him the money from that whatever account or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's the second briefcase of money that he gets.
Yeah,
because they do end up giving it to him, and then we have the whole great scene where they're in the revolving door, and he's like, "Shoot him! No, shoot him!" And that eventually leads to where we're at here with the helicopter scene and stuff. It's probably one of the better scenes in the movie too. I like how he's like cuts the cigar in half, and he's like tells him straight up, "You have until this is done with to get me the money," and then he burns his hand. Like, it feels like something the real Durant would do.
I was gonna say that was like really a great impression of the guy that he did. It just showed how the guy actually developed that. He really becomes just anybody, which is cool.
And that's something that I don't think we touched on, the fact that he can assume identities, assume any identity for that.
Yeah, like there's that part where he's listening to the recording he took of the dude's voice, and then he's able to eventually imitate it.
And
like,
got it exactly right, the right tone and all that jazz. That was
never really explained. What did it? How's that work? How's that factor into this whole deal? I don't know, but it's neat. And then eventually, to close out Durant's awesome run in this, I still feel like it was an awesome death, but I don't know. They should have done something different with it if they were going to bring him back. I don't think they intended to, though. But he hooks the cable of the helicopter to the truck, and they get pulled into a bridge there. And then they kind of like throw a curveball at you, because in the next scene, he's doing his Durant thing again, meeting up with Trask, who has Julie hostage or whatever. And still, even though I've seen this movie, like every time it takes me back a bit to see him so quickly right after that he was just blown to bits. And I had a moment in the movie where people would have been like, "What the fuck?" It's pretty quickly revealed that it's Darkman.
Well, obviously he could survive it. I mean, he did.
Apparently. And that that was pretty smart on Trask's part. He picked up on the fact that obviously this dude can be anybody pretty quick, so he kind of flushes him out with the whole comment about his kids and whatnot. And then we get the awesome rivet gun fight, lots of swinging pulleys and things like that, dudes falling off of buildings. I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts on that as a finale to this shit?
Well, I guess that kind of harkens forwards a little bit to what was it? Was it Spider-Man 3 where they were around some similar
They were fighting on girders.
unfinished building with Sandman. So to me, that just personifies some of that action-esque.
It's a great setting for a final battle. I mean, even if you didn't spend your youth working the high steel, it's still a good place.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of something like Final Fight. You really expect for like one villain to be the villain at the end of the beat 'em up, and then you come in and you find out this other villain is the main villain, and he's kicking your butt even though you didn't think he could actually kick your butt, and that's it's almost a video game like quality to it, but it was just, to me, it was just awesome action.
And good cheesy fun
that he took to it. It's classic supervillain shit where he's like, "Come work for me. You can even have Julie if you want her as part of the deal." And he really is kind of kicking his ass, and they're whipping the shit out of him. He gets that one dude pretty good with the pulley, and at least makes it a one-on-one fight. But friggin' Trask or whatever, or Strax, excuse me. He's giving him a run for it, but then he makes a classic supervillain mistake. Gets a little long-winded when he has his hand riveted to the steel, and pays for it pretty hard. I don't know. I think it's like a good final battle in terms of shit like that. The addition of that guy having like this background in high steel and being real nimble up there was cool. There are parts of it where it looks like it may have been somewhat legitimately dangerous what they were doing to shoot it, and I absolutely love that ending where he's all cocky, hanging by his ankle there, and he's like, "You don't got it in you to kill me. It's not something you can live with," or whatever. And he just drops it without saying a word. There's no like dramatic response from Darkman. He just drops his ass.
Right.
I don't know where he got that as a psychological profile. It's like, what movie were you watching? Like killing people left and right. I think
this guy's responsible for several murders of people you're associated with.
Right? This guy is clearly okay with killing you.
And then, his consolation prize is Julie, and understandably he turns it down.
I don't blame him from what I understand about the situation anyways.
Well, it's sort of a cool commentary on the character there at the end where it's basically like he's become something through this tale of revenge here that he's got to learn to live with, and he's never going to be able to be mentally sound.
Heightened is dead.
So it's
the amusement park date scene, which we didn't really touch on, but I think it really does spell it out.
The amusement park scene was interesting because that's when you got the I'm angry, you won't like me when I'm angry moment with his Hulk scene where he's getting mad because he clearly won the bear and the dude's
a pink elephant, sir.
A carny. So
goddamn pink elephant.
Obviously,
pink elephant, sir.
Obviously, he's not going to give it to him. He's like, "Give me the damn."
I don't know what that guy's problem was. Like, you're really going to just fight with this random? I think he just thought he looked like a nerd and could embarrass him or something. But
Carney,
snapped his fingers. Well, yeah, that's questionable life choice.
He's not going to give him his best stuffed animal.
It wasn't even that cool.
Well, no,
like mid-tier friggin' prize, that finger snap, dude. That still always makes me wince when I watch those.
Yeah, that was pretty intense.
I bet he'll wish he actually gave him the elephant at the end.
Oh, definitely. I don't know. That's another one of those scenes, though, like the graveyard scene and the whole shit that follows, that just feels so out of place because they have no chemistry and it feels like super.
Yeah.
I don't know. They were just going super camp with it, it felt like. And from what I read about them rewriting their scenes or whatever, they took a lot from their theater background. So I don't know if that has something to do with the vibe of certain scenes between the two, but it's simultaneously like kind of one of my favorite scenes in the movie because of the finger snap, but then also one of those ones where I'm like, ugh. This again.
I understand why they have. I mean, it has a good purpose for being in there because it does establish the ending basically. He's got to go away. He figures it out after that moment, like, crap, I can't get a control on my emotions. This isn't going to work.
Correct.
And
And
that's
it's a pivotal moment where he realizes that he's no longer the same person. You know.
Yeah, he's not
as
quite
he
in
was
control
before.
anymore.
Correct. So he's just a man who loses his cool.
Yeah. Random carnies. Horrifying his girlfriend. I love how she screams and the dude screams. It's great.
I love the effect they use for when he has his rage fits. Like, doesn't it show like a close up of his bloodstream or something? And he's just like,
Yeah.
I also like how the scenery cracks, like has like red like cracks in it as he's going. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was a good way to visually like personify the anger, you know. So I guess this is a good point to talk about. You know, if you guys want to throw out a favorite character and a favorite scene, then we can.
I guess I would have to say Durant is like my favorite character of the entire. I mean, yeah, because his character kind of builds over time, even into the second film, and I just love. I just love that actor. You know, he's Larry Drake is an interesting character.
Yeah, he's great, dude. I mean, it's kind of underrated, I would say, as in terms of just being a good actor for bone-chilling shit. Yeah, he's definitely, like, the movie might not be as iconic as it could be, but I would say he's an iconic villain in his own right, you know?
Oh, yeah.
What about you there, Jake? You got a favorite character?
I kind of have to agree. Robert G. Durant is a fun character. Of course, the main character, Peyton, is a pretty good character too, but Durant's probably the most memorable individual character.
Yeah, that'd definitely be my quick vote too of favorite character.
Yeah.
What about you, Brandon?
Oh, Durant's easily. He's just such a fun villain. It's just fun to watch it, and my favorite scene is that scene at the end when he's fighting the like last bad guy. It's just such a cool action scene.
Yeah, I think if I had to choose a favorite scene, well, I mean, I'm gonna assume who's your favorite character, Dustin?
Well, I'm gonna be different here and go with Peyton. Like, because Durant was like a creep, and I think my favorite scene, like I said earlier, is when Peyton finally defeats Durant, and we get that insane helicopter explosion.
Yeah, that's great.
That's my take on that. Like, Durant was a great villain, but he was just so. I did not enjoy the finger chopping. That was too far.
No.
It's because he kept that suitcase full of finger things. Is why I enjoy his character so much. It's like
I mean, he's a cool character.
Every time he added to the darn thing, it was entertaining.
Yeah, I love how
everybody needs a hobby.
It's true, you know, and he seemed pretty meticulous about his. He was putting some type of solution on the ends where they were severed, and it was a well-maintained finger collection, you know. I love that bit where like they're going to meet the Chinese guy, and he doesn't know if the guy's going to pay him or not, but he's like, oh well, if he doesn't, like, we'll just add him to the collection here. It'd be a nice addition, anyways. Like, he's already looking forward to getting the finger, no matter how it turns out. You know? I think if I had to pick a favorite scene, I mean, those are great ones. Everything we've talked about there's a lot of scenes in Darkman that could be favorites, but mine's definitely when he has that freak out and just goes totally insane after he can't crack the time limit on the fake skin. And he's like, look at the dancing freak. And he's dancing around and screaming at the cat.
That is a great moment.
Yeah, it's, I think, one of the more powerful scenes in the movie. It's one of the better scenes with the character.
Skeleton jaw.
It's great.
That's a good job of testing Liam Neeson's acting ability, too.
He seemed like he genuinely had fun doing it, and from what I read, he looked at it as a big challenge because the makeup and stuff, which I would imagine
Right.
the actor, he should be pretty proud of it. He did a good job.
But yeah, he said in the interview I saw, he was like, yeah, nowadays I wouldn't want to sit for all that makeup, but at the time it was a good challenge. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
I mean, other than that, I just love that scene where he's running on the rooftops and stuff. Like, so in terms of visual shit with the explosions and whatnot, that would be a big upvote for me. Just that stuff. Trench coat flowing behind him, all great. What about you two? Jake and Dave, you guys got a favorite scene?
My favorite scene would probably be. I would have to say it's the anger moment where he's mad at the pink bear. A moment because for some reason that rage that it came to him and it went back to his face several times. It was
made for a good gif.
Yeah. So that was one of them, and then I think the other one was finally seeing Durant die. So.
Die.
Well,
I have to say that scene that I quoted earlier where he was talking about, well, you really, even though the finger cutting thing was pretty disturbing and it made me cringe, it was kind of cool seeing his proper introduction as someone you don't want to mess with.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty fun. And in that whole early, again, some of the early stuff that Peyton was doing, kind of setting up that one dude to look like he was stealing from the others, and that whole, I will admit, that whole subway thing with Ted Raimi's character disturbed me a little bit. I didn't like it, but it was creative, and it was like a cinematic whack-a-mole moment. Sort of. It was interesting, but those are probably the parts that really stuck out the most, I would think. And I have to admit, the very end, even though it was a little cliche, it was one of those things that kind of worked because it was.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like him disappearing into the shadows, saying, all that, I am everywhere, and all that kind of stuff. It worked really well. I liked that as an ending.
It's great, and if you're a fan of these people, it's definitely, I think, would be a nostalgia moment for this movie for all of us. Even if he didn't kind of grow up on it, it's like, oh, it's Bruce Campbell. That just warms my heart a little bit.
Oh yeah, that was great. So like I said, I can't help but seeing that as a little bit of an FU to the studio, and I like that.
I don't know, man. I think the main areas where the movie falls short is the chemistry between him and friggin' Julie, and just the fact that they cut out some special effects for sure. I'd like to see a full cut of this eventually because they exist. We know from the statements that they made. So, and the special effects that are in the movie are pretty great.
Maybe one day when they do a Criterion Darkman set, they'll have the full set.
And just mute every time that he screams Julie. Because
I could see Arrow doing a set too.
They should. Someone
I could see Arrow doing a set, though. Shout Select releasing.
I don't really want to see Arrow doing it because it'll probably be Region B, and I don't want that.
I could see Shout Select doing the other two on there.
I know Shout
double pack.
I know Shout has done at least one of the sequels.
Well, they've done all three of them. The collector's edition was the first one. I can't remember if 2 and 3 were all that fancy or not.
I don't
But-
think they were.
Yeah. They definitely, it would be nice if they did like a complete collection where it was like all the special features of the first one and then some. And yes, if there was a Raimi cut, we almost went down that rabbit hole again with Shazam with all that Snyder cut talk. But what about the Raimi cut of Dark?
Seriously, give it.
Right?
And I don't know. I guess the music, it is by Danny Elfman.
Yes, the music was great.
Yeah, it's good. I don't know if it's his best stuff, but he definitely seemed like he had a lot of fun doing it from what I read. And he really liked working with Sam Raimi, so that's
it
good.
It definitely channeled a lot of the stuff he was doing at the time. Like this was the same year as Edward Scissorhands. It was the year after Batman. And there's definitely notes of both of those scores in this one.
Right.
And, yeah.
Oh, what was that we were talking about John Williams the other day? What the hell? You guys were talking about how it was like a good score, but maybe not as good as his other stuff. And
for Superman.
I love the score that Danny Elfman came up with for this one.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, having not grown up with this one, but having grown up with Batman and Edward Scissorhands, it's the same thing. I would not be able to listen to this and immediately pick it out as, that's Darkman. But I would probably listen to it and go, wow, that's a pretty great Danny Elfman score. And I'm sure someone who did grow up with this one as their main one, they'd probably go, oh, yeah, that's an iconic score,
Right, yeah. It's not bad by any means at all. I enjoy it. But that's about all I have on this movie. I mean, it's fun. I definitely, obviously, revisited it several times and would recommend it to friends.
It's a pretty awesome movie.
I've revisited it from time to time too, and if I had it on the whole series on VHS as I do on DVD, I enjoyed it tremendously as a child. I still enjoy the story today. Even though, as an adult, I noticed the chemistry is not there between certain actors.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Like those DCU movies, sometimes you can't get caught up in the imperfections, and you can just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Right.
Yeah, it's fairly easy to do that with Darkman.
You can just for example, you could look at comparing it to, say, the first couple of X-Men movies. If you kind of ignore Halle Berry's performance as Storm, they're a lot better. Yeah.
And I would actually welcome a remake of
this.
For sure. I would love to see where they could take it, how dark they could take it, and still keep the humor to it,
They could do a fourth one. They could just say, you know what, we're going to keep going with it. Sci-fi could take it up. I mean, shoot, this is ripe for a sci-fi series.
There was a pilot TV episode that evidently was made with Robert with the dude playing Robert Durant. That must have either aired or unaired, but it was in 1992. And it was like a half-hour episode or whatnot. But other than that, I think it was dead in the water.
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere. But it would be cool no matter which way they wanted to bring it back. I think it's kind of sad that Darkman got left in the 90s because in terms of like an original modern comic character, it's good stuff,
Oh, yeah. I could even see them redoing like The Shadow at this point in time too.
Oh, I love that movie so much.
Or shoot, they could do another reboot of The Spirit. I feel like The Spirit was kind of mistreated in its movie, though I do feel like it's not as bad.
It wasn't a bad movie. I think it was underrated.
Here too.
People dump on that movie more than it deserves to be.
Believe it or not, there was an earlier The Spirit. So it was a readaptation of
That
that
was
film.
that was actually one of the first, if memory serves, if I'm remembering correctly, The Spirit and Spike Jones is Where the Wild Things Are, I think were my first two Blu-rays.
Wow.
I think so. I think those were the two I started with. Just like I started my DVD collection, if I remember correctly, with X-Men and American Beauty.
But you know,
I actually do remember these things. I started my VHS collection with Robin Hood Men in Tights. So
see, for
good
me,
movies all
characters like this.
Well, I started my DVD collection with Goldmember, so that's okay.
I mean, I started my I started my Blu-ray collection with BBC Planet Earth, so I can't really. I think I did mine correct. But
That's a good one, yes.
I'm not even sure what the first thing in my Blu-ray collection was. It might have been Braveheart, actually.
Yeah, in fact,
do
Sam
have that on
Jones,
Terminator
who
2.
played Flash Gordon in the 80s. He played the original The Spirit
see,
in
I
1987.
actually
Hey,
think all
guys,
of these
I'm gonna-
Darkman goes with them.
I'm kind of dying, so I'm gonna bow out. But my final thoughts on Darkman is it's awesome, and you should definitely give it a shot, especially if you like an earlier type of superhero movie aesthetic. Like it's very a product of its time. It feels kind of similar in tone to me as the Wes Craven Swamp Thing. You know, like kind of a quick and dirty superhero movie, while superhero movies were trying to find their legs kind of as a genre. But it works much better than that, and it's definitely worth your time. So, all right, I'm out.
Okay.
All right.
Good night, bud.
Watch Crypt of Horrors.
All right. I didn't realize Swamp Thing was the Wes Craven. Is that that's the one we're doing next week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yep.
I believe that was my other submission.
I think
Yep.
so.
See,
It's gonna be a
both
good
of yours got
Ooh.
like held up, and I was able to finagle a deal to get our kaiju stuff up for and a couple other Facebook things, but we'll talk about that at the end.
Good deal.
But yeah, actually, I was going to say, to me, though Darkman doesn't have quite the same origins as far as going all the way back to those days as some of the others, to me, that's the group he fits in. He fits in perfectly with characters like the Spirit, the Shadow, the Phantom. To me, he just fits in perfectly with those characters.
For sure.
I agree.
I think it's great too that it's got those Universal monsters kind of elements to it, and it was done for Universal. I think that's kind of a little fate there that just managed to work out really good for Sam Raimi. He's a lucky man, and he did a good job on this. I don't know if any of you guys have anything else to say. Now's the time. I think we can wrap this guy up here.
I just think that this is a great series. I mean, to me, I don't think that this series should be just left dead like in the 90s. I think I think it's well overdue for a remake. In fact, I'd welcome it, and I just want people to go out, see this movie. I guess I actually really love this movie. I love it more than I actually thought. So
it's fun.
That's something that I found out and realized while I was watching it last night. I was like, I'm really enjoying going back to this.
It's a great watch with your friends kind of affair too, because it's it moves along nicely. There's stuff in it you can laugh at and kind of make fun of a little bit.
Well, and
it's just absolutely awesome. It's got all.
I got into the laugh that the guy who replaced Liam Neeson, the laugh that he created afterwards. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Of course. Then again, I also remember him as the Mummy in Brendan Fraser's The Mummy. So I keep thinking back.
He had a Phantom of the Opera quality to him. The guy from the sequels did. So yeah.
Mhm.
Alrighty. Well, in any case, shall we do our outros?
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Who wants to start?
Oh, I'll go, I guess. Mostly I do videos for my channel, Drunken Master Studios. We're working hard over there to get some kaiju reviews out of stuff that we are going to be covering during our kaiju month. So pop on over there and check those out. Also got a couple horror reviews that I did recently. Unfortunately, some of the stuff you're going to have to get redirected to my internet archive for, but I assure you it's worth the minor inconvenience of doing that to check that stuff out. It's going to be a fun journey. Got a review for Godzilla versus Biolante and Gamera versus Gauss coming out in the next couple of days. So look forward to that. That's it.
Alrighty. What about you, Brandon?
Well, of course, I'm Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. We love all things physical media. We do pickups, reviews, we talk about new cinema, and we do some fun stuff with the vlogcast. Of course, upcoming, other than a few reviews, we also have our upcoming anime discussion on Higarashi, which also known as When They Cry.
I'll
For
know
those
about
of you
that title.
who is there, who know it mostly from the States there. This is going to be discussed on Monday, so probably this upcoming, and it's going to be quite the thing. I've managed to get through the first 2 seasons, so I just got to get past those kind of not so good straggling bits on the 3rd season, and I've rewatched it all. But it's going to be kind of fun. I think it's going to be really enjoyable to join us. Of course, I also work with the Inside Movies Galore to help with the scheduling, and we have our votes up. So if you follow, I cannot put these polls up on the Inside Movies Galore page. They only allow 2 options for polls on those pages. But if you are following Delusions of Grandeur, and if you are a follower of Inside Movies Galore, you should very well be following that. You can find the poll there, along with some other outlets. So check it out, because we are trying to get our movies together to see what we are going to discuss for Kaiju Combat in August. But of course, our superhero summer is not over yet. We have 3 delectable films coming up. For our pre-show,
Good
we
luck.
are covering the 2 Tiger and the Bunny films, which are some anime anime motion pictures that kind of summarize and then go off in a slightly different direction from the main series. So a fun take on a kind of one that, in my opinion, is not talked about as much these days, thanks to being overshadowed by others like, say, My Hero Academia. So I'm kind of glad to see this get some love again. And the main film is going to be Swamp Thing, as we were discussing a little bit earlier. So a lot of fun stuff. Can't wait to see it.
Jake?
Hi, I'm Kotobuki Jake. I am the co-host on Septum Sin versus the World. And as he said, we have got some very intriguing discussion coming up soon. I had hoped to also watch Tiger and Bunny, this series, in preparation for the movie discussion, but on top of all of When They Cry, I don't know if that's going to happen. But When They Cry is very much a fun way to spend some time. So join us for that discussion. And then, yes, like I said, the on the next week's one, I look forward to discussing the Tiger and Bunny movies. It should be very interesting. And I, of course, am also a movie anime, and generally media collector. Do have plan to reboot my Kotobuki Jake YouTube channel. It will happen one day. One day, it will happen. Meantime, you can enjoy all the fine channels these other folks have for you.
And my name is David Straggy. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So, if you have not listened to us before, welcome to our channel. We are a fun channel that loves to discuss films to the very bone deep core of their nature, and so we have fun while we're going about it. I mean, we've had quite a journey in levels of filmmaking and some of the aspects of the special effects that sometimes we see and things of that nature. So definitely check out some of our previous discussions and follow along with us as we continue our, as Brandon's Septum Sim has said, as we continue our superhero journey with Swamp Thing and the Tiger and Bunny movies next week. It's going to be an interesting journey because some are definitely out there. So, but I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur. So definitely go over to that channel, check out some of the videos I have uploaded on some of the stuff in my collection, and just some fun reviews that I have of different films that I've watched over time and my thoughts on them, and maybe to inspire every single one of you to at least go ahead and try them. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, and morning wherever you are, and definitely stay out of the shadows, for you never know who might be stalking there. Like, share, and subscribe.